Is the work from home trend driving you crazy? Probably been back and forth at this point and still really undecided whether allowing your workforce to work from home or asking them to all come back into the office full time is the right decision for your business. All right, let's start with the negatives. It's obviously a culture killer, right? How do you build a culture for your organization if everybody's dispersed all over the world and they only see each other a couple of times a week via Zoom meeting? It makes it virtually impossible to do collaborative types of events, to do happy hours or lunches, or even fun activities that the company can sponsor to build relationships with their workers in the office when they're scattered all over the world. Collaboration is the second thing that I really worry about, right? How, when you're working on a project and you've got a deadline and it's got to be done tomorrow, those final finishing touches, it's so much easier to call a short meeting, bring everybody into the forced conference room to put everything up on the big screen and the whiteboard and start hashing through all those little details to get that project over the finish line done on time versus sending back and forth notes over Slack or comments on documents and waiting for somebody to respond. It's a time killer. And it brings up my third point, communication. It's extremely difficult when you're doing everything over text. Millennials, Gen Zs, they love to use text messages. They love emails. But so much gets lost in translation, right? People only read a fraction of the messages that they receive, or they tend to skim and misunderstand. I find myself doing this all the time. I get an email, I glance at it, I read it, and I respond back to the wrong question or misinterpret, or I give a completely different answer. And it happens to me all the time with other people on my team. They send a response to something that I had a list of 3 questions and they answered only one of those questions. And now I don't have an opportunity to send a follow-up, or I do, it's via email. And I wait another half a day to get the response to the other 2 questions. So communication can be a real challenge when we're dealing with remote workers. All right, so some of the big issues that probably concern us the most, and the top one might be, is how do they truly stay focused when you're working at home? You've got your significant others, you've got your kids, you've got all other different types of distractions that employers have. And this happens all too often, is these workers are actually working 2 jobs instead of 1. And that makes staying focused, being productive, and getting their work done nearly impossible in many cases. In fact, it's a lot like stealing. That's the last issue. Are your workers stealing your time? Because of this ability for them to do whatever they want, whenever they want, to be completely unsupervised, to limit the amount of accountability that can occur when trying to manage them, these people could be off doing anything at any given time and ultimately stealing time from the company. So these are several reasons why work from home is a major concern for employers. But let's think about some of the positive things. With organizations who've decided to embrace fully work, the first thing that they've had to do is they have to get their structure, their communication structure down to a T. When you have really highly structured communication schedules, it forces people to come prepared and be organized and be concise. So you do eliminate some of that distraction that happens in the office when you're getting random questions or you're being interrupted in the middle of a project. And I think we've all been there. And this is particularly important for folks that have jobs that require them to really focus. So engineers, lawyers, accountants, creative types who need that time and space to be uninterrupted and focusing on their tasks. One of the major benefits to remote workers is your ability to source talent from literally all over the globe, if not throughout the entire country. And this can be a real challenge, especially in major markets where talent for highly skilled workers is super tight and very competitive. Your ability to source talent from all over the globe allows you to really open up the pool of people that you can select from and be able to find the very, very best people and not be limited to those who are within 20 minutes of driving distance to your office. Also brings up the next major point why remote work can be great. That also creates an opportunity to get more cost-effective workforce by hiring people who live in lower costs of living type places. So in California, we see this all the time. Somebody lives in the Bay Area, just by the nature of where they live, they're making somewhere between 20 and 40% more on average for their salary just because of costs of living. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily any better at their job. All right, one of my favorites is, and we see this and I hear this from business coaches and interviewed a number of them on my podcast, is laser focused on results. Because we have to have very structured communication and accountability schedules, we got to get really clear about what we expect from people and what the outcome of that job is. If we embrace the remote workforce and we create this structure and this clarity around what we expect from people, it actually can really hyper-focus people on their results as opposed to how they do their job. And this can be a really great benefit to enhancing employee and employer satisfaction within the relationship. When people are driving and they're accomplishing things and they're not being micromanaged on how they do it, studies have shown over and over again, this makes more for a happier, higher retainable worker. And that's my last point. Workers in general, as we've seen throughout the studies, even the most recent studies, years after the initial lockdowns from the pandemic, is 75% of them want to be either a hybrid or fully work from home environment. That means only 25% of workers actually want to be in the office full time. And that number is pretty much flipped. 75% of employers want their workers back in the office. So there's a tension between what workers want and what employers want, and making that extraordinarily difficult for recruiting and retention. And it's probably one of the big drivers behind the Great Resignation. Workers that are being called back into the office who have moved out of state or moved farther away from their original offices or have just grown accustomed to working from home are resisting this. They're realizing that their work-life balance is much more important than the work that they're doing. We even saw this most recently in a study of 33 companies and over 1,000 workers who went to a 4-day work week. Again, just continues to highlight that the labor force is shifting to a mindset of, work is important to me, I want to do a good job, but my ability to have a balance between my work and my life and to be able to spend time with my friends and family is equally as important. Okay, now that we've really discussed some of the pros and cons, I hope you're able to make a more decisive decision about which way you're going to go on this, fully remote or fully in office. And that's key when we start to think about our next video, which is writing killer job ads. Either way we want to go, we want to embrace the decision that we made and we want to turn that into a positive. Because there are people on both sides of this coin, and we want to speak to the ones who are going to resonate with our environment the best.